Hello everyone, there's a saying, to understand the rise and fall, we must learn from history. Today, I will interpret the 43rd illustration of China's most famous prophecy, the Tui Bei Tu, to explain what Falun Gong really is. Let's also take a look at some Chinese YouTube bloggers like Wang Zhian, who deeply despise Falun Gong, and a few so-called whistleblowers within Falun Gong, like Yu Chao. Look at their ignorance and foolishness. We won't discuss whether Falun Gong can lead to divinity, as that's a matter for practitioners of Falun Gong to explore. But just based on Falun Gong's core principles, truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance, one can see how these values alone are worthy of humanity's respect and gratitude. As for the notion that some Falun Gong practitioners have not lived up to the expected standards, that is precisely where we need to further improve in our practice, not something for you to use as an excuse to attack. As for attacking Master Li Hongzhi for playing poker and drinking cola, isn't that just grasping for accusations where none exist? How can this be justified? Doesn't everyone have their hobbies and personal dietary preferences? Wang Zhian, with your kind of attacks, even the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, which seeks to eliminate Falun Gong, might despise you. Aren't you hitting the CCP where it hurts? Is there another master in the world who lives such a modest life and only drinks cola? So Wang Zhian, are you saying Master Li Hongzhi is only allowed to drink plain water? What are those CCP officials drinking? They're drinking human milk while holding other people's daughters and wives. Wang Zhian, have you lost your mind because the CCP has banned you from the internet? Attacking someone's daily habits, is that really your reason? Even in the face of such attacks, Master Li Hongzhi continues to patiently advise the world to avoid disasters. Isn't that compassion? Isn't that forbearance? Jesus is still nailed to the cross. This scene will not be repeated with Master Li Hongzhi. I boldly predict here. Let's see how miserable the fate of those who slander Falun Gong will be. If they are fortunate enough to see my video, I hope they can turn back before it's too late. Life is precious. Those who understand should not follow Wang Zhian and end up being buried with him. I'm not here to defend or cover up the issues of individual Falun Gong practitioners, like the well-known issue of money laundering. I don't know the details, so I won't comment on it. My point is that Falun Gong practitioners are individuals, and their actions should be distinguished from the principles of Falun Gong itself. Wang Zhian is confusing people by using the shortcomings of individual practitioners to conflate with the ideals of Falun Gong. I hope everyone won't be deceived. Falun Gong practitioners are people who are still cultivating themselves, and before they become divine beings, they will have all kinds of shortcomings. Once they are without flaws, they won't be here anymore. So don't exaggerate the faults of a few practitioners and use that as a reason to attack Falun Gong itself. That kind of logic is absurd. I sigh because you haven't yet had the chance to participate in this cultivation. Isn't it a bit like sour grapes, criticizing what you haven't experienced? Have you actually read Falun Gong's teachings thoroughly? Do you even know what Falun Gong is about? I have listened to every one of Wang Zhian's videos attacking Falun Gong, from beginning to end, and similar videos recommended by the system. What more sensational material do you think you can expose? Everyone knows that on June 25th of this year, the U.S. House of Representatives passed the Falun Gong Protection Act. That's U.S. law, not just a government document. This is what the U.S. government intends to do. Some people are still waiting for the U.S. government to wipe out Falun Gong. That so-called truth seeker number one is still waiting to laugh at Falun Gong. Well, I don't want to laugh at you. Are those people lost? Enough said. Let's interpret the 43rd illustration of the Tui Bei Tu and see what it's really predicting. The prophecy in Tui Bei Tu differs from other prophecies in that it uses 60 illustrations to predict significant events throughout various historical periods. To help future generations fully understand the meaning of the illustrations, the authors added hexagrams, prophecies, and poems to further explain the illustrations. Therefore, when interpreting Tui Bei Tu, one must prioritize the illustrations. Now, let's first look at the image. It depicts two people, one larger and one smaller. The older person is dressed in an official's robe, which clearly represents the attire of an ancient Chinese official. He raises his right hand above his head, his eyes fixed on a person dressed in plain clothes, as if trying to stop the person from moving forward. The other figure, a younger person in plain clothes, is noticeably smaller in height and size compared to the official. He too is in a walking posture, but unlike the official, he stands upright and faces forward. Let me add a note here. Many people interpret this illustration as showing that the smaller person is dressed more lavishly, even suggesting he looks like an emperor. But how do they see that? Look, he's bareheaded, and his shoes aren't those of an official. Would an emperor be depicted bareheaded while the official wears a hat? We shouldn't force interpretations to fit preconceived ideas. The main figure in this illustration is the person in plain clothes. Behind him are two large black dots and two small black dots. Some versions of the illustration don't include these dots, but they aren't crucial. We need to further analyze the text for interpretation. Judging by their postures, it seems to suggest the plain-clothed person is being beaten. As I've mentioned, this illustration predicts that Falun Gong will return to mainland China. Analyzing this prophecy in light of the suppression Falun Gong has faced until now, the meaning of the illustration aligns with my interpretation. Since both figures are in motion, the final outcome is still unclear. Of course, from the image alone, we cannot infer its connection to Falun Gong. Therefore, we need to analyze the accompanying explanations further. Let's examine the hexagram. It's the Ding hexagram, with wind below and fire above. The overall meaning is one of stability amidst change. Fire gains momentum with the help of wind, suggesting an expanding influence. Based on the hexagram, this primarily predicts the fate of the plain-clothed person. Predictive interpretation is not a one-sided affair. It involves interaction between both sides. From the hexagram, we can conclude that the plain-clothed person must wait for the right opportunity, avoiding haste. Gradually, as the fire spreads, a positive outcome will emerge. Now, let's analyze the prophecy. The ruler is not a ruler. The minister is not a minister. It starts with danger and difficulty, but ends in victory and stability. This prophecy is easy to understand. The ruler is not truly a ruler. The minister is not truly a minister. Those who interpret this illustration as relating to cross-strait relations likely base their interpretation on this line. From this prophecy, we can understand that roles are reversed, with the minister deceiving the ruler. It starts with danger and difficulty, but ends in victory and stability. Coupled with the illustration, we can reasonably interpret that the oppressed side faces initial hardship, but will ultimately triumph, reclaiming the position of the ruler. If this were a prophecy about cross-strait relations, a reasonable interpretation would be that the Republic of China, Taiwan, faces suppression but will eventually seize an opportunity to reclaim its position. However, this doesn't align with reality. The current Taiwanese government doesn't want control of the mainland. It seeks independence. Moreover, the prophecy does not suggest the use of military force. So, it seems there is no script for mainland China to forcefully reclaim Taiwan. Furthermore, Taiwan and mainland China are not in a ruler-minister relationship. Their constitutions cover nearly overlapping territories, which is why there's only one China. Therefore, I conclude that this illustration is not about cross-strait relations. So, how do we explain the ruler is not a ruler, the minister is not a minister? Whether you practice Falun Gong or not, many have heard that Falun Gong's founder, Li Hongzhi, is considered the creator. I'm not forcing anyone to believe this, but if we interpret this prophecy as predicting Falun Gong's return to mainland China, then the prophecy becomes clear. If Li Hongzhi is indeed the creator, think about it. The entire universe was created by him, and the earthly kings are merely figures he arranged to manage the land during certain periods. From the creator's perspective, earthly kings are not true kings, and ministers are not true ministers. Who is the ruler, and who is the minister? It becomes obvious. This line also has a deeper meaning. It suggests that the relationship between these figures is no longer one of ruler and minister, but one of creator and created beings. This is the author's true intent. It starts with danger and difficulty, but ends in victory and stability. My interpretation is that Falun Gong, despite being suppressed, has continuously worked to inform people worldwide about the truth. As people gradually understand Falun Gong's principles, Western countries have extended help to practitioners, granting asylum to those persecuted. Many citizens worldwide have signed petitions in support of Falun Gong, calling on the Chinese government to stop the persecution. Through these efforts, Falun Gong has gained support and will ultimately win global recognition, including from many Chinese people. The CCP suppression will eventually fail, and Falun Gong will return to the lives of Chinese people. If this prophecy were about cross-strait relations, it wouldn't make sense, because the current Taiwanese government doesn't want control of the mainland. They want independence. Let's now look at the poem. The black rabbit enters the dragon's lair, almost gone but not entirely, unspeakable. Only outside, on the tree root, the descendants flourish after 30 years. This poem carries a lot of meaning. All the information is here. Some people interpret this illustration as referring to cross-strait relations. Perhaps certain advisors on the mainland have suggested that the black rabbit enters the dragon's lair refers to the period from the year of the rabbit to the year of the dragon, which aligns with the current time. This interpretation is not entirely wrong, as there is indeed such a layer of meaning. However, enters is a verb and lair is a noun, which makes it a bit harder to explain. Could it be that this prophecy led advisors to suggest to Xi Jinping that this is the period during which the Taiwan issue should be resolved? Mainland China has long spoken of national reunification. As a Chinese person, I too hope for national unity. Perhaps Xi Jinping got carried away and intensified military exercises around Taiwan. And it's possible that the next line, almost gone, but not entirely, unspeakable, caused hesitation about whether to proceed with military action, whether or not they could win. They might be considering this. My take is that this prophecy does not refer to cross-strait relations, nor does it foretell a war over Taiwan. Humanity's wars will soon cease. Didn't the earlier illustrations predict, when the wood person encounters ice, the frost will melt? History is interconnected. In the 42nd illustration, which foretells cross-strait relations during Tsai Ing-wen's presidency, the prophecy already predicted. The longbow lies on the ground, danger, but no danger. Regarding the 42nd illustration, I'd like to draw attention to the rabbit depicted there. The rabbit in that illustration also represents Li Hongzhi. For those interested, I explain the full meaning in another video, so feel free to check it out. Now, how should we interpret the black rabbit enters the dragon's lair? As I've said before, we are interpreting this prophecy after Falun Gong has been suppressed for many years, so it's easier to understand now. The black rabbit represents the slandered rabbit, Li Hongzhi, who was born in the year of the rabbit and whose Falun Dafa has been vilified by the CCP. Historically, it is now time for Falun Dafa to return to mainland China. Why do I say this? In the 50th illustration of Tui Bei Tu, it says, "The man with the tiger's head meets the year of the tiger," which predicted Jiang Zemin's death in his birth year. This was actually heaven giving the current leader, Xi Jinping, his last chance to protect himself. What does this mean? Xi Jinping had been given many opportunities before. For instance, during his anti-corruption campaign, many people expected him to take down Jiang Zemin's faction. But midway through, he stopped and didn't see it through, missing that opportunity. This was his last chance, and such opportunities don't keep coming. If Xi Jinping had distanced himself from Jiang Zemin's legacy of persecuting Falun Gong when Jiang died, he wouldn't be in this situation now. Unfortunately, history doesn't work on assumptions, and we all know she didn't do that. However, what one fails to do, another will eventually do, and responsibility must be taken for what isn't done. This is the root reason she is now being abandoned. The real meaning of almost gone, but not entirely unspeakable, is that at the time of Jiang Zemin's death, Falun Gong had also been spreading for 30 years. Whether the persecution would end at that time was still uncertain. So far, it hasn't ended. But considering the previous prophecy, it begins with difficulty and danger, but ends in victory and stability. Falun Dafa will inevitably succeed in rectifying the world. The other lines in the poem cannot reasonably be interpreted as referring to cross-strait relations. That's the point, because Falun Gong has been persecuted for so long. These sentences are now easier to understand. Here's a tip for those who enjoy interpreting prophecies. The rabbit is a symbol that appears in many prophecies and religious texts, both East and West, in this era. It's the key to unlocking the mysteries of human society. It's also a crucial piece of information for the salvation of humanity, as it is connected to the future savior. Li Hongzhi was born in the year of the rabbit. Remember that movie that was hugely popular a few years ago and caused a lot of controversy? Didn't someone shout, "Free the rabbit," in the movie? The rabbit on the moon in that movie was also vilified. You probably know which movie I'm talking about. Why am I mentioning this movie? It's to say that not everyone slanders Falun Gong like Wang Zhian, following the Communist Party's lead. I offer a kind piece of advice to Wang Zhian and those who comment under his videos attacking Falun Gong. The test isn't over yet. It's like taking an exam. During the test, you can change your answers and make different choices. My point is, if Wang Zhian happens to see my video, and I hope he does, he once admitted that he doesn't understand Falun Gong, didn't he? Well, I do. It's okay not to understand. But if you don't know, don't speak recklessly. Just think, how did this universe come into being? 5,000 years of human science still hasn't settled that question. The Communist Party's entire state machinery couldn't stop Falun Gong practitioners' devotion to it. Yet you, Wang Zhian, think you can disprove Master Li Hongzhi as the creator, acting like a clown? I can prove that Master Li Hongzhi is indeed the creator. Keep watching my videos. Are you suggesting that those of us following Master Li are fools? Do you think my interpretation of the prophecy is far-fetched? Or do you lack the capability? Wang Zhian? Were you triggered by being banned from the entire Chinese internet by the CCP? Are all Falun Gong practitioners brainwashed, while those of you who don't practice are the only ones who are clear-minded? Isn't that logic absurd? Isn't it laughable? Compare the sympathy and support Falun Gong receives from the international community to how it's treated in China. The contrast is stark. It's like people enjoying a delicious meal and praising the chef's skill while those who haven't tasted it insist, "It can't possibly be good. I heard it's not good at all." Who do you think people will believe? If Wang Zhian were to publicly apologize and work to undo the negative impact he's had on Falun Gong, I believe it could at least reduce the karmic consequences he'll face in the remainder of his life. This isn't about attacking anyone. It's simply saying if you don't understand something, listen to others before speaking. If Falun Gong no longer existed, you could say whatever you wanted, but the fact is, Falun Gong is still spreading and growing, while the Communist Party is about to collapse. The fall of the Communist Party is something Master Li Hongzhi predicted at the very beginning of the persecution. Let's continue with Tui Bei Tu. You probably have a new understanding of the black rabbit enters the dragon's lair now. The dragon refers to the snake. Xi Jinping was born in the year of the snake. The dragon's lair can also be interpreted as the land of the dragon. China, modern-day China. Some have interpreted it as the year of the dragon, which isn't entirely wrong, but it's not the most accurate. It should be the year of the snake. To put it plainly, this means that during the period from the year of the rabbit to the year of the snake, Falun Gong will return to its homeland, China. Only outside, on the tree root, the descendants flourish after 30 years. Falun Gong was introduced in 1992, and by 2022, it had been 30 years. Li Hongzhi has settled in the United States, so while Falun Gong originated in China, its roots are now abroad. There are still many people overseas practicing Falun Gong. According to the prophecy, it is time for Falun Gong to return to China. It's now 2024, and whether the persecution will end remains uncertain. Interpreting these lines as referring to cross-strait relations simply doesn't work, so there's no need to dwell on that further. Recently, on June 25, 2024, the U.S. House of Representatives unanimously passed the Falun Gong Protection Act. I think this law will not go unnoticed by those who understand the situation. Whether this decades-long persecution will end remains to be seen. No one can stop what's coming. China has always been a land of justice, and China is a chosen nation. We, as Chinese people, all hope for a just and fair society. Everyone should have confidence in China. When we chose to be born in China, it was because we saw hope there. The creation of the universe has all led to this event. How could everything not be arranged accordingly? The entire process is testing each individual. Extremes beget change. The situation will shift soon. Everyone should be mentally prepared. The unprecedented transformation is about to unfold. Will Falun Gong return to mainland China? We'll find out next spring. Let's continue following the prophecies in Tui Bei Tu. Thousands will live, but one will not escape. Let's hope this line isn't predicting Xi Jinping's fate. Haven't there been rumors that she was held accountable during the Beidou conference? Where there's smoke, there's fire. From the following prophecy, a soldier with a bow will lead. It seems a military officer might launch a coup. What will happen to Xi Jinping? There's no need to elaborate now. We'll understand which soldier it is when history unfolds. Well, I've finished explaining this prophecy for you. How you choose to interpret it is up to you. One thing is certain. History will not change because of anyone's interpretation. What the Creator intends, no one can alter. The phrase, "the ruler is not a ruler, the minister is not a minister." It begins with difficulty and danger, but ends in victory and stability. From this prophecy is similar to the last two lines of the 10th poem in the Song Dynasty poet Xiao Yang's Plum Blossom poem. Peace will return to the world, and the four seas will be one family. Who is the master and who is the guest? If you're interested, you can take a look at the Plum Blossom poem. For those who are interested in my videos, please continue following my channel. I'll soon begin my series of videos titled "What Was the Purpose of Creation?" The complex world has a theme. In this series, I'll explain step by step the origin of the creation myths, the origins of humanity, and the true meaning of human existence. Please stay tuned and see you in the next episode.